If I would write a song that nobody would ever hear, I'll be dead and gone. Elvis loved the song. That was when he and Priscilla were having their problems, which I met her recently.
She's the queen of country, the symbol of Southern grace, and the closest thing America has to a living angel. But even angels have enemies. For decades, Dolly Parton has been praised for her kindness, humility, and heart. But behind that rhinestone smile lies a story most people never hear. Because, while Dolly rarely speaks about it, there are 5 names in the music world she couldn't stand working with. And the reasons why will change the way you see her forever. Some tried to control her. Some mocked her in public. One even sued her for millions. And despite her charm and legendary forgiveness, there were moments even Dolly couldn't let slide. This isn't the version of Dolly you've seen on talk shows or in interviews. This is the side the cameras missed, the private battles, the broken friendships, the powerful standoffs that tested everything she believed in. You may know the songs, but you don't know the full story. Until now, before she was a solo star, before Dollywood, before Jolene and 9 to 5, there was Porter Wagner. And for a time, he wasn't just Dolly's duet partner, he was her gatekeeper. In 1967, Dolly joined the Porter Wagner Show, one of the most popular country music programs in America. Millions tuned in each week to watch Porter in his flashy suits and his new young co-star, a 21-year-old blonde with a voice that could silence a room. But not everyone was thrilled about her arrival. Fans of Porter's former partner, Norma Jean, booed Dolly on stage. Some even sent her hate mail, but Dolly didn't flinch. She smiled, sang, and stayed focused, and it paid off fast. Within months, the chemistry between her and Porter was undeniable. Together, they cranked out hit after hit, and the public bought into their perfect duo image. But off-camera, it was a different story. Porter wasn't just Dolly's singing partner. He was her manager, her booker, her creative filter. And as Dolly's fame grew, so did his grip on her career. He decided what songs they'd record, where she'd perform, who she could work with. He even had the final say on her business moves. For a while, she went along with it. After all, he gave her the platform. But Dolly wasn't just a performer. She was a writer, a businesswoman, and a dreamer who knew her talent could take her farther, if she had the freedom. By the early 70s, she was writing songs that didn't fit the Porter and Dolly mold. She wanted to break out, but Porter wasn't ready to let go. She tried to leave quietly. In 1974, she walked away from the show after 7 years. On the surface, it looked amicable. Behind the scenes, it was a full-blown war. 5 years later, Porter hit her with a $3 million lawsuit. He claimed she broke their contract, owed him for management fees, and wanted a cut of her solo success. To Dolly, it felt like betrayal from someone she once saw as a mentor. She didn't drag him through the mud. She settled quietly, but the wound was deep. Years later, she revealed the emotional toll it took on her, saying that Porter couldn't accept her growth, that their relationship had turned into a cage. It was 5 years, then 6, then 7, she said. He just wouldn't let go. And yet, in true Dolly fashion, she never held a grudge publicly. When Porter was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 2002, it was Dolly who walked him on stage. When he was dying in 2007, she visited him in the hospital. And when he passed, she held a private tribute concert at Dollywood. It was one of the most painful relationships of her life. Part mentor, part manipulator, part memory. And the song she wrote during their final fight, I Will Always Love You. But this wouldn't be the last time Dolly clashed with a collaborator. The next one? A musical sisterhood that turned into silence and shade. In the world of country music, there are collaborations. And then there are legends. When Dolly Parton, Linda Ronstadt, and Emmylou Harris teamed up, it was supposed to be a dream. 3 powerhouse voices, blending harmonies like they were born to sing together. Fans called it magic. Critics called it historic. But behind those pitch-perfect vocals, there was a storm brewing, and Dolly was right in the center of it. The trio first floated the idea of working together in the mid-1970s. They admired each other's talent, shared a love for rootsy, authentic country music, and wanted to make something timeless. But reality got in the way. Label politics, clashing schedules, and conflicting egos. It wasn't until 1987 that Trio was finally released, and it was worth the wait. The album went platinum, topped the charts, and even won a Grammy. On the surface, it looked like a musical sisterhood at its peak, but inside the studio, it was anything but harmonious. Dolly, known for working fast and from the heart, wanted to record in 1 or 2 takes. Linda Ronstadt, a notorious perfectionist, would sometimes spend hours obsessing over a single line. Emmylou tried to play peacemaker, but the tension was real. Dolly later admitted she was this close to screaming at Linda during the sessions. She even joked that she'd have to pull her wig off to keep from saying something she'd regret. The frustration was mutual. Linda didn't hold back either. In interviews, she called Dolly flaky, said she was constantly late or canceled last minute, and claimed she couldn't rely on her to show up. Worse, she accused Dolly of not taking the project seriously, of being more interested in her solo fame than the group's vision. It hurt, not just because of the criticism, but because Dolly had genuinely believed in what they were creating. The fallout wasn't explosive, but it was cold. They attempted a second album, Trio 2, but label delays and rising tensions pushed it back until 1999, over a decade later. By then, the magic was fading, and so was the friendship. While Linda and Dolly never declared open war, there was a silence between them that spoke volumes. Interviews turned awkward, invitations stopped, and the dream trio quietly dissolved. But if you think that feud was painful, the next one? It involved a king, and a decision that could have changed Dolly's career forever. When you think of country legends and rock icons, 2 names stand alone: Dolly Parton and Elvis Presley. Both changed music forever. Both built empires from nothing. And once, just once, their paths nearly collided. It was the early 1970s. Dolly had just written I Will Always Love You, a deeply personal ballad about her painful split from Porter Wagner. The song was raw, emotional, and beautifully simple, and it quickly became a hit. Then came the call. Elvis wanted to record it. At first, Dolly was stunned. The king of rock and roll, the man who could turn any song into gold, wanted her music? It was flattering. It was surreal. But then came the catch. Elvis's manager, Colonel Tom Parker, had a hard rule. If Elvis recorded your song, you gave up 50% of the publishing rights. No negotiation. For most artists, the exposure alone would be worth it. But Dolly wasn't most artists. She owned her songs. She wrote them herself. And this one, in particular, meant everything to her. She said no. It was one of the hardest decisions she ever made. She adored Elvis. She wanted him to sing it. But she couldn't let anyone, even the king, take half of something that personal. Colonel Parker was furious. Elvis was disappointed. Dolly was devastated. I cried all night, she later said. I would have loved to hear Elvis sing it, but I just couldn't let it go. That decision may have ended a potential friendship. Elvis never recorded the song, and insiders say he never fully forgave her for turning him down. It stung deeply, especially because Dolly had idolized him since she was a little girl. But here's the twist. That same song, years later, would be picked up by Whitney Houston and become one of the biggest songs in music history. The royalties made Dolly millions. She still owns the rights, and she never had to give up a single percent. She stood her ground, and it paid off. But it came with a price. Dolly once said that walking away from the Elvis deal taught her something. You can't put a price on respect, not even for a king. But as brutal as that was, nothing could prepare her for the public humiliation that would come next, courtesy of the most controversial radio host in America. Dolly Parton is known for her grace under pressure. She doesn't lash out. She doesn't start fights. But in 2008, one man pushed her farther than anyone ever had. That man? Howard Stern. At the time, Stern was America's most controversial radio host, known for his raunchy humor, zero filter, and complete disregard for boundaries. But what he did to Dolly wasn't just crude, it was vile. Using clips from Dolly's audiobook, My Life and Other Unfinished Business, Stern's team spliced her voice into a fake interview, cutting and rearranging her words to make it sound like she was saying disgusting, racist, and vulgar things. It was edited to perfection. a disturbing illusion that made Dolly insult other artists, talk graphically about her body, and say things that were beyond offensive. It wasn't satire, it was a hit job. To Stern's crew, it was just a joke. Shock comedy. They laughed about it on air, but to Dolly, it was devastating. She released a rare, emotional public statement. "I have never been so shocked, hurt, and humiliated in all my life." She made it clear she was considering legal action, something she almost never does. She said, "If there was ever going to be a lawsuit, it's going to be over this." Fans were furious. Country music stations pulled support for Stern. Even casual listeners called it what it was: character assassination. Dolly didn't deserve that, and the backlash was loud. But Stern? He never apologized. No regret. No acknowledgement. Just shrugged it off as comedy. For years, Dolly refused to speak about it again. She didn't take him to court. She didn't fan the flames. She just let time pass, the way she always does. Then, in 2023, something unexpected happened. Dolly Parton, the same woman Stern humiliated on air, walked into his studio for the first time. It had been 15 years since the fake interview, and now she was promoting her rock album, Rockstar. For Stern, it was a major get. For Dolly, it was a strategic move. The conversation was polite. He praised her, called her a legend, complimented her energy. But anyone watching closely could feel the tension. The wound might have healed, but the scar never left. Dolly didn't go there to forgive him. She went to prove something, that no matter how dirty people get, she'll never stoop to their level. She wins with grace, even when grace is the last thing they deserve. And while that feud made headlines, the next one was quieter, but just as cutting. Not all feuds involve shouting matches, lawsuits, or public humiliation. Sometimes the sting comes from a single sentence, said at the wrong time, by the wrong person. Enter Jeff Tweedy, frontman of the alt-country band Wilco, and a songwriter known for his abstract poetic lyrics. During an interview, Tweedy was asked about Dolly's legacy as a songwriter. His response? "She wrote, 'Jolene and I will always love you' on the same day. And honestly, I think she should have stopped after that." He wasn't joking. Tweedy didn't call Dolly untalented, but he dismissed her songwriting as simple, superficial, and not on the same level as more serious lyricists. He said her success came more from her image, the wigs, the charm, the persona, than from her words. To a lot of people, it sounded like casual criticism. But to those who know Dolly's work and her story, it was a slap in the face. Because songwriting isn't just a job for Dolly. It's her lifeline. She grew up in a cabin with no electricity, no money, no future, just stories and songs. Every lyric she's ever written comes from lived experience: poverty, family, fame, betrayal, love, loss. She doesn't write to impress critics. She writes to connect. While Dolly didn't publicly respond to Tweedy's comments, insiders say she was aware and disappointed. Not because she needed his approval, but because she knows how easily women in music, especially country, get written off as lightweight. It wasn't the first time someone underestimated her, but Dolly, as always, stayed silent, letting the longevity of her music speak for itself. And speak it does. She's written over 3,000 songs, been covered by the biggest names in pop, rock, soul, and country, inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and sold more records than Jeff Tweedy could ever dream of. She never clapped back. She didn't need to, because when the music lasts, the critics fade. But through it all, lawsuits, betrayal, insults, shade, Dolly Parton has never lost her spark. And in the final chapter of this story, we'll reveal what these feuds really meant and how they shaped the legend we know today. For someone known for being unproblematic, Dolly Parton's journey through the music world has been anything but peaceful. She's fought off lawsuits, turned down legends, survived public shaming, and endured criticism from her own peers. But through it all, she's done something most stars never manage. She never lost who she was. Dolly's not just a survivor, she's a strategist. She chooses grace, not because she's weak, but but because she knows exactly how powerful it is. She doesn't fight back in interviews or trade insults on social media. She waits, she works, and quietly, she wins. And maybe that's the most misunderstood thing about her. People see the smile, the sparkle, the sweet Southern accent, and they think she's soft. But behind that warmth is someone who's had to outthink, outlast, and outgrow the very people who tried to control her, dismiss her, or break her down. Each feud in her life told a story. A mentor who mistook control for loyalty. A collaborator who couldn't see her as an equal. A king who underestimated her worth. A shock jock who thought he could humiliate her for laughs. And a critic who tried to define her legacy with one sentence. But in every case, Dolly didn't need revenge. Her success was the answer. Her music was the proof. Her kindness was the weapon. Because when you're as underestimated as Dolly Parton, the most powerful thing you can do is win on your own terms. Now here's the real question. Which of these feuds do you think changed Dolly the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon if you want more deep dives like this one. Because trust us, the stories behind the spotlight, they're just getting started.